Chapter 18.
Come on, Lawler, unlock this cell.
It was more like an order than a plea. Galloway gestured toward Morgan.
I've put up with that all night, and I'm sick of it.
Jess had the jail keys in his hand, and yet he hesitated. If you knew the Cowan girl was alive, why didn't you put up your kick last night? He demanded shrewdly.
Kick?
Mace snorted wrathfully.
How loud does a man have to kick before you hear it?
But he understood what the lawman was driving at.
Don't worry, Lawler. I'll show you that girl, and no tricks about it. My neck's worth that much to me.
Lawler appeared hard to convince. While he was fumbling unhurriedly with the cell lock, Morgan unleashed a hot blast at him.
Be careful what you're letting yourself in for, Sheriff, he blazed. If that skunk can take you straight to Candace Cowan, then her father's charge against me falls through. Either I go along with you, or this is a case of false arrest, and neither you nor Cowan is able to forget it.
The lawman turned back to gaze at him in frowning perplexity. Sam Sloane's laugh was harsh.
He's got an argument there.
His smooth comment was a subtle tout.
How many men are responsible for the girl's disappearance anyhow?
Oh, slack away, Morgan, Jess growled, beginning to lose his temper.
It ain't no sure thing Galloway's telling the truth, but if we do find the girl, you'll be out of that cell as soon as I'm able to manage it. I will not, Ray was stern. From what was said here, Galloway's trying to duck a murder trap. Either he's lying now, or I'm innocent of kidnapping. You're either giving me the same chance you give him, or there'll be a new sheriff in this man's town.
His contention appeared sound enough to the most stubborn mind. Lawler weighed the matter grumpily. Where's the girl, Galloway? He rasped. Mace showed a significant reticence.
Oh, no, you don't, Lawler. I ain't telling you nothing. I'll take you there, and that's all I'll do.
Pat pretended to voice a reluctant persuasion. You'll have to let Morgan out, Lawler, he said in a low tone. There's no other way. He can come along under guard.
Galloway's gonna go under guard, not me, Ray promptly fired out. I'll be damned if he gets another chance to knock me out, and that's flat.
Huh? The sheriff sensed a mystery. What's this?
Oh, Mace lost his head last night, Pat supplied indifferently, not wanting anything to block their progress now that Galloway had cracked. We'll straighten him out fast enough. Lawler looked at the rancher strangely, as if never having rightly seen him before.
If that's the case, we'll give him a thorough searching before any more accidents happen. He threw Galloway's cell open. Frisk him good, Roof. The deputy roughly complied, much to Mace's disgruntlement, while Jess proceeded to release Morgan. The young redhead stepped out of his cell with obvious relief, and he glanced steadily at Pat. This must be your doing, Stevens. I don't know how you managed it, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Pat grinned easily. Well, it could be that Galloway did you a favor without knowing it, he discounted lightly. We'll see what he comes up with. Ray nodded. Having seen the lazy mare man in action, he was not deceived. That he could maintain as firm a grip on this situation as anyone was in a testament a moment later. Slap the cuffs on that man, Lawler, he ordered, indicating Galloway as they stepped out of the cell block. He is still under suspicion of murder, as I reminded you before, and we're certain to run into his friends, and then it might be a bit too late. Mace was fuming and snarled, blowing his threats and an uncalled-for manhandling. But Lawler was commencing to harbour his own reasons for doubting the man's integrity. Morgan's right, Galloway. Give the devil his due, he jested grimly, as he clamped the bracelets on the exasperated rancher. "Personally, I'm hoping you're able to produce the girl. Till you do, I'm obliged to be taking precautions." That the matter would not end there he neglected to state. Galloway's anxiety to get out from under a preposterous charge was so strong that he apparently failed to realize the fact. Pat was the only one who read his true motive. Mace was willing to make any sacrifice to get out, counting on his sharp wits to serve him afterwards. Sam and Roof Dad lost no time in getting up the horses, and there were 6 in the little group that pulled away from the jail a few minutes later. It was too early to attract public attention, though undoubtedly they were seen. Galloway set their direction, and it was lost to no one that they seemed to be heading straight for the Flag Range. Ray Morgan had been allowed to proceed unencumbered, though it was noticeable that the lanky deputy sheriff rode close to him most of the time. It did not appear to bother the young fella, and Sam was able to post him on recent events. Ray whistled softly at the end, staring at Galloway's back. "Taking a crack at your Barry-S horses and trying to finish Stevens off. And here's this business about Candace," he muttered in amazement. "Galloway's sure gone overboard, or else he's got more confidence in himself than I have. You mean to tell me that Lawler isn't wise to all this?" Sam smiled. "Stevens is pretty good at skinning skunks. If Mace ain't already guessed the knife's been slipped into his hide already, I'm disappointed in him." Galloway was leading them across the remote corner of the Flag Range now, and it was cold. Collars were turned up, and there was a raw wind. A storm seemed to be brewing. The sky was leaden and heavy and unpromising. A couple miles west of the Flag headquarters, Galloway drew rein in a fringe of pines. "Wait here, Lawler, and I'll bring the girl to you," he proposed boldly. "It won't take me 15 minutes. I still got these cuffs on, and I wouldn't be foolish enough to run." Just Lawler blinked at him owlishly. "Are you serious?" he growled, not bothering to wait for an answer. His tone hardened. "Either take us to the girl like you said, or Galloway, we're heading right back for that jail here and now." Mace displayed a disposition to argue. "Blast it all, Jess, you've known me quite a while," he began weightily. Jess's headshake was adamant. "I don't know what you're trying to hide, but I ain't bargaining, Galloway, and I want to see that Cowan girl now." Morgan himself could not have put it more aptly and forcibly. Glancing around at those bleak faces, Mace seemed to understand that he was licked. "All right, come on," he snarled, wheeling his horse. "We'll get this over with." A great part of his upper range was covered with broken forest, a land flagged with rocks and gnashed by hidden canyons. Gusts of wind sought dismay in the upper branches as they started off through the pines, and fugitive snowflakes began to fall down. Galloway following an angling trail down a steep canyon side, and before long Pat glimpsed a red-walled log cabin below. Thickened snow slanting across the interval space, but he saw the adjoining corral and 2 or 3 horses that were stamping about within. Morgan saw it too. His face tightened at the prospect of presently finding Candace. They reached the canyon floor and pushed on, Lawler scanning the cabin with interest. A wisp of smoke issued up from a rough stone chimney. "It's one of your stock camps, I take it," he remarked colorlessly. "Take it any way you want it," snarled Mace, rendering savage by the necessity of what he was doing. "I'm undertaking to turn that girl loose to you, Lawler, and then you'll turn me loose and no monkey business about it." No such terms had been included in their dubious bargain, but the sheriff held his peace. None of them were inclined to press for a discussion at this juncture. If Mace thought he could presently see the end of his entanglement, however, he was due for a disappointment. "Man, if Candace is only here, I'll rub Cowan's nose in that dirt," Ray exclaimed under his breath, but Pat deemed the young fellow honestly more concerned about the girl herself than anything else. Morgan could hardly contain his impatience. "Hey, Jake!" Galloway hailed the cabin as they drew up from the place. After a moment's wait, the slab door jarred open a crack and a man peeped out, and there was a further delay before he crowded through to face him, pulling the door behind him shut. Sam gaped at him incredulously. It was Pike Taggart. The crabbed flag foreman looked at his employer narrowly, his sour glance touching the others and withdrawn. "Yeah?" he growled shortly. "What do you want?" He seemed trying, by his manner at least, to convey a warning. Galloway stared at him with reddened features. "Well, Pike?" He was gruff. "What are you doing here?" Taggart shrugged. "Well, Jake, he needed a breather," he muttered against his will. "I'm expecting him back any time." His stolid mind was cautiously feeling out the reason for the presence here of Sheriff Lawler and the others. Pat Stevens' appearance struck him at a particular ominous and wary of his tricks, but Galloway brushed this aside. "It's all right, Taggart," he was short. "Since you're here, just trot that girl out here." With a brief space, the foreman didn't move, his jaw slowly sagging. Not for an instant had he so much as dreamed that Galloway's companions might even suspect their presence. To state the fact that boldly seemed to him sheer madness. His mouth snapped shut. "You know what you're doing, Mace?" he demanded harshly. Morgan's unwavering blue eyes were ablaze. "You heard your boss, Taggart. If Candace is in there, you get her out here now." Yet still Taggart hesitated, unwilling to accept what was happening. "Mace," he began hoarsely. "Damn it, man!" Galloway was furious. "I've been accused to my face of murdering that girl. Do you think I don't know what I'm doing?" Taggart went pasty. His hand shook as he started to open the door. "Okay, but I'm acting under orders. I don't want nothing to do with this." The words were a mistake. It was then Stevens privately concluded that Taggart had had only too much to do with the matter. He filed that thought away to use at a proper time. Pike was gone from view for the space of 3 or 4 minutes, while Morgan fidgeted in the saddle. Without ostration, Sam moved around behind Galloway, keeping his every movement in sight. The slab door scraped open again, and Candace Cowan stood in the opening, unharmed but considerably harassed, if her expression meant anything. Suddenly it altered. "Ray!" she cried. "I knew you'd come for me." Out of the saddle in a twinkling, Morgan had her hands in his. It was all he could do to keep from taking her into his arms. Mace Galloway's rasping words brought them back to the earth with a jar. "Well, there you are, Lawler," the rancher ground out with all his old arrogance. "And there's your murder charge, flat as a pancake. I suppose you get these trinkets off me and be quick about it." He lifted the handcuffs. "Oh, I don't know," Sam cut in sarcastically. "What about this kidnapping rap there, Lawler? That was strong enough to hold Morgan on, but it don't apply to Mr. Big Britches here?" He indicated Galloway with exaggerated difference. No, you don't." Mace's voice rose with the rigidity of steel. "Lawler, I'm warning you. There's a limit on how far you can go with me. Now don't be crowding me. You got the girl safe and sound. Take a tip. You turn me loose and get out of here." "Hold it, boys." Pat's levelness of tone was enough to arrest them all. "Let's not get mixed up. We found Candace, but there's still a dead girl that needs to be explained away, and that can't be done in a minute." "That'd be Schaefer's girl, you mean?" Lawler nodded. "I know." On the verge of an outburst, Galloway paused, arrested, his dead glance stealing at the sheriff's face. "You mean you led me here, you knowing all the time it was another girl that was killed?" he whipped out. Jess nodded woodedly. "There was this charge against Morgan," he returned dryly. "Long as there's a chance of disproving it, I had to play along, and it seems I did, with Pat Stevens' help." It was a magnificent concession for him, even if Galloway did not appear to appreciate it. "I'm not done with this murder charge either, though," Pat asserted. He broke off to dive out of the saddle and nail Taggart to the ground as the foreman made an attempt to scuttle around the corner of the cabin and slip away. "Hold on, Taggart," he admonished disgustingly, hauling the other up. "Wouldn't be labouring under a guilty conscience, would you?" "And why should I?" Taggart blustered huffingly, striving to break free without success. "Take your paws off me, Stevens. I don't know what you're driving at." "Oh, yes, you do," Pat assured him cheerfully. "In fact, it's got something to do with you being here right now." Pike stiffened, whitening under his weathered tan. "Well, how could that be? Only turned up here this morning by pure accident." He seemed almost afraid of the answer, yet defiant. Pat said, "You knew only too well what was happening to that Schaefer girl, Taggart. You were prowling around at Morgan's Starcross Ranch when you spotted her there. You couldn't be bothered to tell one girl from another, a crusty old reprobate like you. You thought she was Candace." He never took his shrewd gaze off the foreman's face, driving on. "You knew that Candace was being held here under Galloway's orders, and you figured she escaped, and if she had, that'd be just too bad for you, so you let her have it, Taggart. How could you know I was watching the whole thing? After sleeping on it overnight, you rode over here hot-footing it just to see how wrong you might be." Taggart visibly shrank as the grim indictment ran its exorable course to the end. He seemed to fear Pat unreasonably, every line of his wizened face betraying the correctness of the other's surmise down to the chapter and verse. His boss never gave him a chance to speak up. "You crazy fool," Mace bellowed. "So it was you that brought all this down on my head." Pat never let up on Taggart, shaking him sternly. "Speak up, man. It'll go worse for you if you don't." Every word was a blow. "Am I right or am I wrong?" Well, gasped Pike, writhing in Pat's grip, seeing no way to turn. "Yeah, I did it, Stevens, but it was an accident, I tell you. She grabbed at my gun, I swear. I didn't mean—" Waiting for no more, Pat turned toward Lawler. "Well, there's your case, Jess," he just said levelly. "Discount Taggart's clumsiness and lies, you have all your answers. I'll have more to say about Galloway when we get back to town. Best be bringing him along." He paused, noting the lawman's distraction. Lawler gazed up the trail, through the thickened snow, as if he had ceased to listen. He was intent upon something, and as hushed silence descended over the pine-shrouded canyon glade, Sam Salone caught an inkling of what it was. "Someone's coming," he muttered. "Better step in the cabin here." "Too late, mister." A puncher rode out through the snow-dusted pines, a satyr cast upon his ruddy face. A carbine rested across his saddle. His obstinate pupils flickered over them all watchfully. Their blank surprise at this unheralded arrival was plain. Suddenly the carbine cracked flatly, and Roof Dad hastily dropped his gun, rubbing his stinging fingers. "Utah!" Galloway's voice was rich with surprised gratification. "Where's the boys?" The man called Utah waved vaguely, a comprehensive gesture. "Well, more or less all around you, boss," he drawled. His glance sharpened at the sight of the handcuffs.
Wouldn't be needing some help right off now, would you?
Mace's laugh was guttural.
I could do with less company, not meaning yourself, though, he allowed. It's our friend Pike here who really needs you the most. He got himself in a fine jackpot, he has.
With the barrel of his gun, Utah waved Pat away from the foreman. His mouth a thin line. Pat glanced about. At least 3 other men were closing in on him. Outlaws beyond a doubt.
Do as he says, Stevens, murmured Sheriff Lawler. I never argue with a leveled gun. Roof'll tell you.
And be sharp about it too, Stevens, Galloway threw in, expansively now that the tables were turned. You're making my foreman mighty uneasy standing there. I wouldn't put it past him to resent it, if you know what I mean.
Silently, his gray eyes expressionless, Pat complied, moving towards his horse.
End of chapter 18.